Mom won't notice if we use her emergency fund. The words floated from my kitchen like they had weight, and my hand went dead against the hallway wall. I'd just come back from the bathroom, wasn't gone more than 3 minutes, and there was my son, Trevor's voice, casual as Sunday morning, talking about my money like it belonged to him. I stopped breathing. Didn't move. The hardwood under my feet felt different suddenly, like the floor I'd refinished myself didn't know me anymore. "She barely checks her statements anymore," Trevor continued. I could hear him leaning against the counter, that relaxed confidence I'd raised him with. The dishwasher hummed in the background. Normal sounds. Nothing felt normal. Then Vanessa, his wife, cut in sharper. "We'll replace it once the Cleveland property sells. She's 72. Baby, how long does she really need retirement money?" Have you ever heard someone you raised talk about you like you're already gone? Like you're 72 years of living, 37 years of double shifts at Mercy General Hospital, every overtime hour and holiday you worked. Like none of that counts anymore because you've reached an age where people start doing math on your remaining time? I counted 13 steps backward. Didn't make a sound, each footstep deliberate, controlled, the way I used to walk through the ICU when a patient was coding and panic would have killed them faster than their condition. My bedroom door clicked shut. I locked it. Sat on the edge of my bed at 9:47 p.m. I checked the clock because numbers don't lie, and I'd learned a long time ago that times and dates matter when people start erasing you. On my nightstand sat a purple folder. Label said medical records in my handwriting. Inside, 3 months of bank statements, printed emails where Trevor had researched things like streamlined power of attorney Michigan and transferring parent assets, screenshots of text messages where he discussed managing mom's assets with someone I didn't recognize, and a small digital recorder I'd started carrying 6 weeks ago after he'd shown up the third time with papers for me to sign, just to make things easier when something happens. I'm a nurse. Was a nurse for 37 years. We're trained to see patterns, to catch the thing that doesn't fit before it kills someone. My own mother lost everything to a nephew back in Georgia, who smiled at Sunday dinners while draining her accounts on Mondays. I swore I'd never be that blind. But I never thought I'd need to protect myself from the child I raised. The room felt smaller. The walls pressed in with the weight of what I now had to do, prove my own son was planning to erase me, not with violence, with paperwork, with a smile and "I'm just worried about you, Mom," and signatures I'd be too trusting or too tired to question. If your family sees your savings as their backup plan, you need to see what's coming. Subscribe so you catch the warning signs I'm about to tell you. The folder weighed nothing in my hands. The recordings inside weighed everything Trevor didn't know I had. Pause and remember that timestamp. 9:47 p.m. You'll see why it matters later. The tea went cold while I counted. 3 forged signatures, 17 bank inquiries, 1 son. Dawn came through my bedroom window the way it always did, soft gray, then gold. I hadn't slept. Just sat with documents spread across my bedspread like evidence in a crime show. Except this was my life, my child, my money he was planning to take. First document, bank statement from July showing 3 attempts to access my account information. I never authorized that. Called the bank in August when the 4th attempt happened, and that's when the manager, Kaisha, told me someone claiming to be my financial representative had been asking questions. Second document, printed email dated June 14th. Subject line, Michigan POA streamline process. Trevor had sent it to himself from a public library computer. I could see the IP address stamp at the bottom. He'd researched how to get power of attorney without the person knowing until it was done. Third document, text message screenshots. Trevor to someone named Marcus P. Not his father. His father was Marcus Washington, passed in 2019. Mom's got about $130K liquid. Once I'm on the accounts, Cleveland deal gets its bridge funding. I'd worked every Christmas for 15 years to build that emergency fund. Picked up double shifts when my feet were screaming and my back couldn't take another step. That money represented 37 years of choosing the hospital over sleep, patience over comfort, responsibility over everything else. He saw it as bridge funding. The digital recorder sat next to my reading glasses. 4 conversations saved, time-stamped. Trevor asking about my estate plans on August 3rd. Trevor suggesting I add him to my savings account in case of emergency on August 19th. Trevor telling Vanessa on September 12th that the paperwork's almost ready. And the one from last night, September 28th, 9:47 p.m., where he said I wouldn't notice. I organized everything by date, cross-referenced the emails with the bank statements, matched the text messages to the recorded conversations. Nursing teaches you to document like your license depends on it because it does. Now, my financial life depended on this purple folder. At the bottom, under everything else, a business card. White, simple lettering. Patricia Okonkwo, paralegal, elder financial protection. We'd met at church. I'd called her 6 weeks ago when Trevor's questions started feeling less like concern and more like research. She'd told me, document everything. Don't confront yet. Let him think you're not paying attention. So I did. And he did exactly what she said people like him do. He got comfortable, got sloppy, started talking in my own house like I was already too old to hear. Patricia read without speaking for 4 minutes straight. Then she looked up and said one word, Maze. We were sitting in a private study room at Southfield Public Library, 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Patricia wore a sharp blue blazer, her reading glasses perched on her nose, while she went through my purple folder page by page. She didn't react to anything, not the forged signatures, not the texts about bridge funding, not even the recording of Trevor discussing my accounts like inventory. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, clinical. This isn't sloppy. He's building a legal maze. By the time you'd notice the money's gone, he'd have paperwork showing you authorized everything. Courts see a 72-year-old woman challenging her successful son. They assume confusion. They assume dementia. The word landed like a slap. Dementia. That's what he'd use. That's what they all use. Patricia spread 3 documents across the table. First, a corporate filing for something called TWM Holdings LLC, registered in Columbus, Ohio. Trevor's name is sole member. Registration date. She pointed with her pen. March 2019. 2 weeks after Marcus died. 2 weeks after I buried my husband, Trevor was setting up a company I'd never heard of. He's been planning this for a long time, Patricia said. Not impulse. Strategy. Second document. Bank forms from Detroit Community Bank with signatures that looked close to mine but weren't. The capital L in Loretta was wrong. Too loopy. I've signed my name the same way for 50 years. Patricia had already sent these to a handwriting analyst. Third document. Email chain between Trevor and someone at a property investment group in Cleveland. Subject. Investor update. Family liquidity secured. Dated 2 weeks ago. He'd told investors he already had my money. Patricia closed the folder. We need 2 people. David Chen, forensic accountant in Ann Arbor. He'll track every account, every LLC, every digital footprint Trevor left. And Monica Reeves, civil rights attorney specializing in elder financial abuse. She's handled 3 major cases in Wayne County, won all 3. My hands were steady. I'd seen worse in the ICU. Codes, traumas, families falling apart in waiting rooms. But this was different. This was my son, the boy I raised, the man who'd just told investors he'd secured money that wasn't his to promise. Patricia slid a form across the table. Header. Emergency protective order. Account freeze pending investigation. We freeze everything before he moves, she said. You sign, I file today. He won't be able to touch $1 until a judge reviews this evidence. The pen felt heavy, but I signed, dated it. Watched Patricia tuck it into her briefcase. Would you freeze your own accounts to protect them from your child? Yes or no? Comment below. David Chen pulled up the LLC filing on his laptop. Registration date March 15, 2019, 2 weeks after Marcus died. We were on a conference call, Patricia's office speakerphone connecting me to David in Ann Arbor. His voice was calm, methodical, the way good doctors sound when they're telling you something terrible but need you to stay focused. TWM Holdings, LLC, David said, registered in Columbus, Ohio. Trevor Washington, sole member. Business purpose listed as real estate investment and asset management. But here's what matters, Mrs. Washington. Look at the timeline. He screen shared with Patricia. I watched her computer, a spreadsheet with dates color-coded. March 3, 2019, Marcus's funeral. March 15th, LLC filing. March 22nd, business bank account opened at Huntington Bank, Columbus. April 1st, first email from Trevor's personal account to the LLC business account. Subject line, Mom's estate, preliminary assessment. He started this while you were grieving, David said. That's not impulse. That's not desperation. That's planning. My throat felt tight. I remembered March 2019, remembered sitting in the funeral home picking out Marcus's casket, signing forms, shaking hands with people whose names I forgot 5 minutes later. Remembered Trevor being so helpful, handling the guest book, coordinating with the church, telling me, "Don't worry about the details, Mom. I've got this." He'd had it all right, had it registered, had it planned. David kept going. I pulled his search history from cloud backups. He uses Google Sync across devices. Between March 10th and April 30th, 2019, Trevor searched transferring parent assets without probate. How long does estate settlement take in Michigan? Power of attorney versus conservatorship, an elderly financial incapacity legal standard. Patricia's jaw tightened. I felt nothing. Nurse brain kicked in. Emotional shutdown, process the information, deal with feelings later when the crisis is managed. There's more, David said. His tone shifted. I found correspondence between Trevor and a private investment group in Cleveland, real estate syndicate. They gave him $340,000 in seed funding for a mixed-use property development in 2021. Project failed. He owes them the full amount plus interest. Total liability now $340,000. Numbers appeared on Patricia's screen. Payment notices, demand letters, legal threats. Deadline for repayment October 15, 2024, David said. 3 weeks from now. After that, they pursue fraud charges for misrepresenting his financial backing. Patricia leaned forward. He told them he had family liquidity coming through, didn't he? Correct, David confirmed. Email dated September 10th to the syndicate's attorney. Family liquidity will clear next month, providing necessary bridge to settle outstanding obligations. He'd sold my money before stealing it. Promised investors he'd deliver my emergency fund like it was already his. Trevor slid the envelope across my dining table with a smile I'd seen at every childhood Christmas. This time, it hit a noose. It was his 45th birthday dinner, October 1st, exactly 3 days after I'd overheard him in the kitchen. Vanessa had brought red velvet cake, his favorite since he was 9. Candles, good china, the whole setup. Normal family birthday, except nothing about us was normal anymore. Got you something, Mom, Trevor said, that easy warmth in his voice. Well, not a gift exactly, more like peace of mind. He pushed the envelope toward me, cream-colored, professional. My name handwritten on the front in his neat print. I opened it. Inside, 23 pages of legal documents printed on heavy stock, tabs marking signature lines. Header, estate planning update, Loretta Washington. Trevor leaned back in his chair, relaxed. I've been thinking about what happens if something happens to you. We should make sure everything's in order. This updates your will, makes me primary beneficiary and executor, and gives me health proxy with financial authority. Just standard stuff. Protects your wishes. 3 signature lines. Witness boxes already filled in with names I didn't recognize. Vanessa cut the cake, her movement smooth, practiced. She didn't look at me. That's when I knew. She was in on it. This wasn't spontaneous, this was rehearsed. I flipped through the pages slowly. Nursing taught me to read medical charts under pressure, catch the detail that doesn't fit. This document did something specific. It gave Trevor control of my accounts immediately upon signing, not after my death. The language was buried in Section 4, Paragraph C, subsection nui. Health proxy shall include authority to manage financial assets during periods of incapacity or upon principal's designation of need for assistance. Translation: he could access my money the moment he decided I needed assistance. "Let me have my lawyer review this first, honey," I said, calm, even, like I was commenting on the weather. The temperature in the room dropped. Trevor's smile stayed in place, but his eyes went flat. "Your lawyer? Mom, I am your family. This is just paperwork to protect you." "I'm sure it is," I said, setting the envelope down. "But I don't sign anything financial without review. You know that." Silence. Vanessa's fork clattered against her plate. Loud, sudden. She recovered, laughed it off, but her hand shook reaching for her water glass. Trevor forced a laugh too, lighter, trying to reset. Of course, no rush. Just want to make sure you're covered." But his jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff. They knew. Something had shifted, and they didn't control it anymore. The rest of dinner was performance. Small talk about Vanessa's job, the weather, neighbors I hadn't seen in months. Trevor cut his cake, thanked me for the watch I'd bought him, hugged me goodbye at the door. Normal, son. Normal visit. But when Vanessa passed me in the hallway heading to the bathroom, she didn't make eye contact. And when Trevor gathered the birthday cards from the counter, he left the envelope with the documents sitting on my table, like he expected me to sign them later, quietly, without the pressure of an audience. I picked it up after they left, felt the weight of it. 23 pages designed to make theft look like care. "Order granted," Monica's text read. 4 syllables, every dollar locked. 6:14 a.m., October 4th, 3 days after Trevor's birthday dinner. I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee I hadn't touched yet when my phone buzzed. Monica Reeves, the civil rights attorney Patricia had connected me with, sent a screenshot. Wayne County Court header, Judge Marianne Hutchins presiding. Emergency protective order approved. All accounts linked to Loretta Washington frozen effective immediately, pending investigation into suspected elder financial exploitation. Trevor didn't know yet. The order would be served at his work address, some consulting office he rented in Southfield. Court estimated service time, 10 a.m., 2 messengers, official documentation, public record. I sipped my coffee. It had gone lukewarm, but I barely tasted it anyway. My hands were steady, no shaking, no tears, just this quiet, settled feeling, like when you finally made the hard call in the ICU and you know it's right even though it's going to hurt. Monica's follow-up text, "Don't answer if he calls. Let him process. Document everything." I thought about Trevor waking up this morning in his house 15 minutes away, making breakfast, getting dressed for work, thinking he still had time to execute whatever plan he'd drawn up, thinking his mother was too trusting, too old, too tired to see what he was doing. The October sun came through my kitchen window, same light as always, same counter where I'd heard him 3 nights ago talk about my money like it was already his. Patricia had explained how the freeze worked. Trevor couldn't withdraw, transfer, or access any of my accounts. Couldn't use the power of attorney documents he'd tried to get me to sign. Couldn't touch the emergency fund he'd promised to investors in Cleveland. Everything stopped until a judge reviewed the evidence and made a ruling. My phone sat on the table, screen dark, waiting. At 9:58 a.m., it lit up. Trevor calling. I watched his name flash on the screen, watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, 4, let it go to voicemail, waited 30 seconds. Notification, 1 new voicemail. I didn't listen to it, not yet. Nursing taught me to stay calm when everything around you is chaos. Control what you can control. Document the rest. I opened my notes app, typed October 4th, 9:58 a.m. Trevor called. Did not answer. Voicemail received. The order was granted. The accounts were frozen. My son was about to learn that silence doesn't mean surrender, and that the mother he thought wasn't paying attention had been taking notes the whole time. David found 17 letters. 5 were marked, final notice. 2 mentioned attorneys. Patricia had set up another conference call with David Chen. This time he'd gone deeper. Forensic accounting, he called it. Tracking every financial thread Trevor had left exposed. I accessed public court records and business filings across 3 states, David said, his voice coming through Patricia's office speaker. Trevor's in significant trouble, Mrs. Washington. This explains the urgency. Documents appeared on Patricia's laptop screen, shared from David's system. First letter, dated April 2024, from something called North Point Real Estate Syndicate in Cleveland, professional letterhead, polite language. Requesting updated timeline for capital return on Project Riverside. Initial investment $340,000. Second letter, June 2024. Same syndicate, different tone. Payment now, 90 days overdue. Immediate response required. Third letter, August 2024. Final notice stamped in red across the top. Failure to remit full payment by October 15, 2024 will result in legal action for fraud and misrepresentation of financial backing. My chest tightened. October 15th. That was 11 days from now. He told them he had collateral. David continued. I found email correspondence between Trevor and the syndicate's attorney. September 10th. Trevor writes, family liquidity will clear next month, providing necessary bridge to settle outstanding obligations. Family liquidity. My emergency fund. Money I'd earned in night shifts and double-time hours while he was still in high school. Money I'd saved through Marcus's illness and after his death. Money that represented every Christmas I worked, every vacation I skipped, every time I chose responsibility over comfort. Trevor had sold it before he'd stolen it. Promised investors he'd deliver $340,000 that wasn't his to promise. There's more, David said. I found correspondence with a law firm, Collins and Patterson in Columbus, Ohio. They're representing the syndicate. September 28th. They sent Trevor a final demand, full payment by October 15th, or they file criminal fraud charges and notify Michigan authorities for investigation into source of claimed collateral. September 28th. The same night, I'd overheard Trevor and Vanessa in my kitchen. The same night, he'd said I wouldn't notice if they used my emergency fund. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was desperate, cornered, facing criminal charges if he didn't deliver money he'd already promised. Patricia leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. This gives us leverage. Trevor's not just unethical, he's liable. The syndicate's attorney copied Wayne County Prosecutor's Office on their last correspondence. They're building a case whether we proceed or not. My voice came out steadier than I felt. What happens to him? That depends on what he does next, Patricia said. Right now, he's facing civil liability from the investors and potential criminal investigation for the fraud. If he comes after you legally, if he tries to claim you're incapacitated or that you authorized his access, we bury him with this. One letter's signature stood out at the bottom of the final notice. R. Patterson, Collins, and Patterson Law, Columbus, OHCC, Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. The letter arrived certified mail, return address, Trevor Washington, pro se. 12 pages. Every paragraph a knife wrapped in concern. October 7th. 3 days after the freeze order. The mail carrier made me sign for it. Thick manila envelope, official looking. I knew before I opened it what this was. Counterattack. I sat at my kitchen table and read every word. Petition for emergency hearing regarding Loretta Washington's financial capacity and need for protective intervention. Filed by Trevor Washington, representing himself. Addressed to Wayne County Probate Court. The language was careful, loving even. Petitioner has observed significant decline in his mother's cognitive function over the past 6 months, including memory loss, confusion regarding financial matters, and susceptibility to outside influence. Outside influence. He meant Patricia, meant Monica, meant anyone helping me protect myself from him. Petitioner seeks emergency psychological evaluation to assess capacity and temporary conservatorship to protect respondents' assets from exploitation by third parties claiming to act in her interest. He was flipping it, making himself the protector, me the victim, and my attorneys the villains. Page 4 listed documented concerns. Claims that I'd forgotten conversations about estate planning, that I'd become withdrawn and suspicious without cause, that I'd made impulsive legal decisions without family consultation. 3 affidavits attached, signed statements from Vanessa and 2 of Trevor's business associates I'd met maybe twice, all saying they'd noticed Loretta's memory issues and were concerned about her vulnerability. My hands didn't shake reading it. Maybe they should have. Instead, I felt cold, clear, the way I used to feel during a code in the ICU when someone's heart stopped and there was no time for panic, only protocol. He was trying to prove I was incompetent. If he succeeded, a judge could assign him control over my finances for my own protection. Everything I'd built, every boundary I'd set, every document I'd gathered would disappear under a conservatorship order. I called Patricia. She answered on the first ring. "He filed," I said. "I know. Monica got the notification an hour ago. We expected this." Her voice was steady, unimpressed. "He's scared. The freeze order backed him into a corner with his investors, so he's trying to regain control by painting you as incapacitated. Can he win? Not with what we have," Patricia said. "But we need to respond fast. I'm sending you to Dr. Benjamin Okafor today for a full cognitive assessment. Monica's drafting our counter-filing. We'll attach your medical records, employment history, and character statements. When we're done, the only person who'll look incompetent is Trevor." I read the last paragraph again. Petitioner requests emergency hearing within 7 days to prevent further financial harm to respondent caused by unauthorized freeze of assets. Unauthorized. He called the court-ordered protection of my own money unauthorized. "He's claiming the freeze is hurting me," I said. "Of course he is," Patricia replied, "because it's hurting him. Court date will probably be set for October 18th. That's 3 days after his investor deadline. He's trying to access your accounts before they come after him." I looked at the affidavits again. Vanessa's signature. 2 men I barely knew, swearing I couldn't manage my own life. If your child called you confused to steal from you, how would you prove your mind is sharp? 1 word. Comment it. I pulled out a second purple folder from my closet. This one labeled Trevor, Response Draft. Time to show him what competence actually looked like. Dr. Okafor dated the cognitive assessment October 8th, the same day Trevor claimed his mother couldn't remember conversations. I'd been seeing Dr. Benjamin Okafor for 12 years. He knew my medical history better than I did. Every prescription, every annual physical, every time I'd come in with a pulled muscle from lifting patients or a stress headache from double shifts. The assessment took 2 hours. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, verbal recall, spatial reasoning. He asked me to remember 3 words and repeat them 5 minutes later. Asked me to count backward from 100 by 7s. Asked me to draw a clock showing 3:45. Asked about current events, my daily routine, my medications. I answered everything. No hesitation, no confusion. At the end, Dr. Okafor leaned back in his chair and looked at me over his reading glasses. "Loretta, your cognitive function is perfect. Better than perfect. You scored in the 96th percentile for your age group. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning is sound, and frankly, you're handling this family situation with more clarity than most people half your age would manage." He printed the assessment results, handed me 3 copies. "I'm writing a letter for your attorney. Anyone who claims you're experiencing cognitive decline is either mistaken or lying. Based on this evaluation and your 12-year history as my patient, I'll testify to your full mental capacity if needed." Monica Reeves filed our response to Trevor's petition on October 10th. I watched her assemble the counter evidence like she was building a wall brick by brick. First, Dr. Okafor's cognitive assessment scored and dated with his medical license number on official letterhead. Second, my complete medication list. 1 prescription, blood pressure medication, standard dose, no dementia drugs, no psychiatric medications, nothing that would affect cognitive function. Third, employment records from Mercy General Hospital showing I'd worked full shifts as a registered nurse until my retirement in 2021, 3 years ago. Performance reviews included, all excellent. Last review noted, Loretta demonstrates exceptional attention to detail and sound clinical judgment. Fourth, character statements from 3 former colleagues at Mercy General, Susan, Janet, and Dr. Patel, all people I'd worked alongside for over a decade. Each letter said the same thing in different words. Loretta Washington is sharp, competent, and fully capable of managing her own affairs. Monica's cover letter to the court was 1 page, surgical in its precision. Final paragraph. Respondent Loretta Washington is not experiencing any cognitive decline. Petitioner's claims are contradicted by objective medical evidence and appear designed to gain financial control rather than provide genuine protection. This court should deny the petition and consider sanctions for filing without factual basis. She submitted everything October 10th, 8 days before the scheduled hearing. Court date confirmed October 18th, 2 summer p.m. 3 days after Trevor's investor deadline. The timing wasn't coincidence. Everything was about to come out in open court. Monica pressed play. Trevor's voice filled the courtroom. She barely checks her statements anymore. October 18th, Wayne County Civil Court, 2nd floor, Judge Marianne Hutchins presiding. Small courtroom, wood paneling, fluorescent lights, that particular smell of old paper and air conditioning that runs too cold. Trevor sat 3 rows ahead of me with his attorney, a younger man in a gray suit who'd introduced himself as Peter Caldwell. Trevor wore navy blue, crisp white shirt, looking every bit the concerned son. He hadn't looked back at me once since I'd walked in. Vanessa wasn't there. I noticed that, made note of it. Judge Hutchins had spent 20 minutes reviewing the filings, Trevor's petition claiming I was incompetent, Monica's response with Dr. Okafor's assessment, and my employment records. Now came the evidence portion. Miss Connor Reeves, the judge said, you indicated you have recorded conversations relevant to this matter? Yes, Your Honor. Monica stood, held up a small digital recorder. Michigan is a one-party consent state. Mrs. Washington legally recorded 4 conversations between herself and her son over the past 6 weeks. These recordings demonstrate petitioner's actual concern was not his mother's welfare, but access to her financial assets. Trevor's attorney objected. Relevance, Your Honor, these recordings... Judge Hutchins cut him off. Overruled. If the son is claiming protective concern, his own statements about the mother's condition are absolutely relevant. Proceed, Ms. Reeves. Monica connected the recorder to the courtroom's sound system. Press play on the first file. Trevor's voice clear and casual. Mom's got about $130K liquid. Once I'm on the accounts, Cleveland Deal gets its bridge funding. Background noise, restaurant sounds, clinking glasses, date stamp, August 19th, 2nd recording, Trevor to Vanessa, in what sounded like a car. The paperwork's almost ready. She'll sign it. She trusts me. September 12th, 3rd recording. Trevor on the phone with someone. I need access by October. Investors are getting aggressive. Family money's the only way out. September 20th, 4th recording. The one from my hallway. September 28th, 9:47 p.m. Trevor. Mom won't notice if we use her emergency fund. She barely checks her statements anymore. Vanessa. We'll replace it once the Cleveland property sells. She's 72. Baby. How long does she really need retirement money? The courtroom was silent. No one moved. The recording kept playing, my footsteps backing away, the soft click of my bedroom door. His voice proved what his smile denied. If you're watching someone lie to your face, subscribe. I show you what evidence actually stops them. I watched Trevor's shoulders go rigid, watched him lean over to whisper to his attorney, watched Peter Caldwell's face shift from confident to concerned in the span of 30 seconds. Monica stopped the playback. Your Honor, these recordings were made over a 6-week period. They show a consistent pattern. Petitioner discussing his mother's assets as resources for his personal financial crisis, not expressing genuine concern about her cognitive state. At no point does he mention confusion, memory loss, or diminished capacity. He mentions opportunity. Judge Hutchins looked at Trevor. Mr. Washington, did you make these statements? Trevor's jaw worked. His attorney put a hand on his arm, whispered something. Trevor nodded. Yes, Your Honor, Peter Caldwell said. But context, I'll determine context, Judge Hutchins said. I'm calling a 15-minute recess. When we return, I want to hear from Mr. Washington directly about his investor obligations and whether those obligations influence this petition. She stood. Everyone stood. Trevor still hadn't looked at me. Would you have played those recordings publicly or settled privately? Defend your choice below. Trevor's attorney returned with a number, $15,000 cash, no admission, mutual non-disclosure. 15-minute recess ended. Everyone filed back into the courtroom. Judge Hutchins wasn't seated yet, still in chambers. Peter Caldwell approached Monica at our table, manila folder in hand. My client would like to resolve this matter, he said quietly. Professional smile, reasonable tone. Avoid further family conflict and public proceedings. Monica didn't touch the folder. I'm listening. Mr. Washington will pay Mrs. Washington $15,000 to compensate for any misunderstanding regarding estate planning discussions. All parties sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Mrs. Washington withdraws her protective order. Mr. Washington withdraws his capacity petition. Both parties agree not to pursue further legal action. Clean slate. Misunderstanding. That word again. Like Trevor hadn't researched fraud techniques while I was burying his father. Like he hadn't promised investors my money. Like I hadn't heard him say I wouldn't notice. Monica looked at me. I shook my head once. My client declines, Monica said. Peter's professional smile tightened. Mrs. Washington, this is a generous offer. Litigation is expensive and emotionally draining. Your son wants to repair the relationship. This settlement allows everyone to move forward with dignity. $15,000, I said. First words I'd spoken directly to anyone on Trevor's side all day. For the $127,000 he planned to take. For the LLC he registered while I was planning his father's funeral. For telling investors he'd secured money that wasn't his. That's your math? Peter shifted his weight. Mrs. Washington, there's no proof any funds were actually taken because we froze the accounts before he could, Monica interrupted. Your client filed this capacity petition to regain access. The recordings make that clear. Judge Hutchins has heard them. Continuing this hearing only exposes your client to more scrutiny about his investor debts and potential fraud charges. The bailiff opened the door. Judge is returning. Peter looked at Trevor, who sat rigid in his seat, staring straight ahead. Peter looked back at us. Last chance to settle this quietly. I decline, I said again. Resume the hearing. Peter returned to his table, whispered to Trevor. Trevor's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles pale. Judge Hutchins entered. We all stood. Mr. Caldwell, she said, settling into her chair. Did the recess produce any resolution? No, Your Honor. Mrs. Washington wishes to proceed. Very well. Judge Hutchins opened a file folder. Ms. Reeves, I believe you indicated you have additional witnesses? Monica stood. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Keisha Robinson, branch manager at Detroit Community Bank. The courtroom door opened. A woman in a burgundy blazer walked in. Trevor went completely still. Monica opened the final exhibit folder. Evidence Trevor didn't know existed. The bank manager's testimony lasted 9 minutes. By minute 3, Peter Caldwell stopped taking notes. Keisha Robinson took the witness stand with the kind of calm that comes from doing your job right and knowing you can prove it. Mid-40s, burgundy blazer, professional without being cold. She'd managed the Southfield branch of Detroit Community Bank for 7 years. She knew my accounts. She knew my patterns. Monica approached. "Ms. Robinson, do you recognize the respondent, Loretta Washington?" "Yes, Mrs. Washington has been a customer at our branch since 2018. Checking, savings, and a money market account." "And do you recognize the petitioner, Trevor Washington?" Keisha looked directly at Trevor. "Yes, he came into the branch 3 times this year attempting to gain access to his mother's accounts." Peter stood. "Objection, Your Honor. Attempting to gain access characterizes—" "I'll allow it," Judge Hutchins said. "The witness can describe what occurred. You can cross-examine. Continue, Ms. Reeves." Monica handed Keisha a document. "Can you identify this?" "This is an account authorization form dated April 12, 2024. Someone," she glanced at Trevor, "presented this form requesting to be added as a joint account holder on Mrs. Washington's savings account. What happened?" "I compared the signature on the form to Mrs. Washington's signature card on file. They didn't match. The capital L was formed differently, and the pressure points were inconsistent. I denied the request and flagged the account for potential fraud." My chest loosened. I'd never known this happened. Never knew Keisha had been protecting me before I even knew I needed protection. Monica continued. "Were there other attempts?" "Yes. June 18th, Mr. Washington came in with a different form, a power of attorney document, requesting information about account balances and transaction history. I asked to contact Mrs. Washington directly to verify authorization. He became defensive and left without providing verification." "And the third time?" "August 19th. Mr. Washington presented another account authorization form, this one notarized, claiming his mother had signed it at a lawyer's office. I told him I needed to speak with Mrs. Washington personally before processing any changes. He said she was confused and might not remember signing it. That raised immediate red flags. One bank employee's refusal to look away saved $127,000. If you've ignored small warnings before, subscribe. We're covering the signs everyone misses." "What did you do?" Monica asked. "I called Mrs. Washington that afternoon. She confirmed she'd never signed any authorization forms, never asked Mr. Washington to access her accounts, and never gave him permission to make inquiries on her behalf. I recommended she come in to review her security settings. She did. We placed additional authentication requirements on all her accounts." Monica submitted 3 forms into evidence, each one with signatures that looked like mine but weren't, each one time-stamped, each one denied. "Ms. Robinson, do you have video footage of these visits?" "Yes. Our security system keeps footage for 12 months. I preserved all 3 interactions when I filed the internal fraud alert." Judge Hutchins leaned forward. "You filed a fraud alert?" "Yes, Your Honor. Bank policy requires it when we observe repeated unauthorized access attempts. I submitted it to our security department on August 20th. I also noted that if Mr. Washington succeeded in any future attempt, it should be reported to Adult Protective Services." Trevor's attorney declined to cross-examine. What could he ask? The dates were recorded. The signatures didn't match. The video existed. Keisha stepped down, walked past Trevor without looking at him. He'd tried 3 times to steal from his mother, and a bank manager he'd probably never thought about again had quietly stopped him every time. The judge didn't use the word fraud. She didn't have to. The order used willful exploitation. Legally, that's worse. Judge Hutchins removed her glasses, looked at Trevor, then at me, then back at the document spread before her. "I've reviewed the petition, the response, and the evidence presented today," she began. "Mr. Washington petitioned this court for an emergency psychological evaluation and temporary conservatorship, claiming his mother lacks capacity to manage her finances and is vulnerable to exploitation." The courtroom felt smaller, colder. I kept my hands folded in my lap, steady. The evidence contradicts every claim in that petition, Judge Hutchins continued. Dr. Okafor's cognitive assessment shows Mrs. Washington has full mental capacity. Her employment history demonstrates decades of sound judgment in a profession that demands it. Character statements from colleagues confirm her competence. Meanwhile, the recordings submitted by Mrs. Washington reveal that Mr. Washington's concern was not his mother's welfare, but his own financial crisis. Trevor stared at the table. The testimony from Ms. Robinson establishes a pattern of attempted unauthorized access spanning 6 months, 3 separate attempts, 3 denials, 3 forged signatures. Mr. Washington's claim that he was acting protectively is inconsistent with secretly attempting to gain account access without his mother's knowledge or consent. Judge Hutchins picked up her pen, started writing on the order form in front of her. The court finds that Mrs. B. Washington has full capacity to manage her affairs and is not in need of protective intervention. Mr. Washington's petition is denied in its entirety. The emergency protective order freezing Mrs. Washington's accounts is made permanent, with Mr. Washington permanently barred from any access to, inquiry about, or authorization regarding his mother's financial accounts. Monica's hand found mine under the table, squeezed once. Furthermore, Judge Hutchins continued, Mr. Washington is ordered to cease all contact with his mother regarding her finances, estate planning, or any matter related to her assets. Violation of this order will result in contempt charges, Peter whispered to Trevor. Trevor shook his head. The court is forwarding this matter to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for review of potential criminal charges related to attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. While this court declines to recommend incarceration, the prosecutor may determine that criminal investigation is warranted. My throat felt tight, not with tears, with something closer to relief, validation. The system had worked. Someone had listened. Finally, Mr. Washington is ordered to pay Mrs. Washington's legal fees in the amount of $8,400 within 30 days. Failure to pay will result in wage garnishment. Judge Hutchins signed the order, dated it October 18, 2024. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down, one sharp crack. Trevor stood immediately, grabbed his briefcase. Peter tried to say something to him, but Trevor was already moving toward the exit. Didn't look back. Didn't pause. The courtroom door swung shut behind him. Through the window, I could see the parking lot. Vanessa's car was there, engine running, driver's seat occupied. She'd been waiting the whole time. Trevor walked out first, didn't hold the door. Vanessa pulled out of the parking space before he'd even closed the passenger door. The birthday card arrived 3 weeks later. No return address. Inside, Mom, I'm sorry I got caught. November 8th. I was sorting mail at my kitchen table when I saw the envelope. Cream-colored. My name and address in Trevor's handwriting, the same neat print he'd used since elementary school when I'd taught him cursive, wasn't enough for important documents. No return address. Postmarked Columbus, Ohio. I opened it. Generic birthday card. To a special mother, even though my birthday wasn't until February. Inside, a handwritten note on the blank side. Mom, I'm sorry things got so complicated. The lawyers made everything worse than it was. I was trying to help you plan for the future, and somehow it turned into this legal mess. You chose strangers over family. You let people who don't know you convince you I was the enemy. Dad would be ashamed of what you've done to this family. If you ever want to talk without attorneys involved, you know my number. Trevor. I read it twice, photographed it with my phone, filed it in the purple folder with everything else. Not one word of actual apology, not one acknowledgement of the forged signatures, the investor debts, the recordings where he discussed my money like inventory. Just blame. Lawyers made it complicated. I chose strangers. Dad would be ashamed of me, not him. Patricia had warned me about this. When they lose legal control, they'll try emotional control, she'd said. Guilt, obligation, family loyalty. Don't respond. Let him sit with the consequences. So I didn't respond, didn't call, didn't text, just documented and moved forward. Through Patricia's network, I heard things. Trevor had been forced to sell his house in Southfield, couldn't make mortgage payments once the Cleveland investors filed their lawsuit. He'd moved to Columbus, trying to salvage what was left of his real estate ventures. Vanessa had filed for separation in late October, citing irreconcilable differences. No kids involved, so it was moving fast. The investor lawsuit was still active. They wanted their $340,000 plus interest, plus damages for fraud. Trevor's attorney in that case was trying to negotiate a settlement, but the syndicate wasn't interested. They wanted full payment, or they'd pursue criminal charges for misrepresenting financial backing. None of that was my problem anymore. I met with Patricia again in mid-November, updated my will with clean, clear language, named my niece Angela, Marcus's sister's daughter, as executor and health proxy, someone I trusted. Someone who'd shown up to Marcus's funeral and stayed to help clean the house afterward. Someone who called every few weeks just to check in, not to ask about money. The new will included specific language. Trevor Washington was explicitly excluded from any inheritance, executor role, or decision-making capacity regarding my estate, medical care, or finances. Legal and final. He'll contest it, Patricia said. Let him try, I said. We have the recordings. We have the court order. We have everything. Would you keep their number? Block and delete or block and save? Tell me why. I kept Trevor's number in my phone, blocked but saved. In case he needs help someday, I told Patricia. Real help, not money, help. She nodded, understanding without agreeing. Loretta went back to Mercy General 6 months later, not as a nurse, as a guest speaker for their elder protection training. April 2024. Spring in Detroit, finally. The kind of morning where you can smell the earth waking up, where the cold breaks and you remember why you stayed through the winter. Patricia had connected me with the hospital's continuing education coordinator. Mercy General was launching a staff training program about elder financial abuse, how to recognize signs in patients, how to report concerns, what resources exist. They wanted someone with first-hand experience to speak, someone who'd survived it. I wore the same blue cardigan I'd worn to court, walked through the same hospital entrance I'd used for 37 years. Different purpose now, same building. 40 staff members in the conference room, nurses, social workers, patient advocates, administrators, some faces I recognized, people I'd worked alongside for decades. Janet was there, Susan, Dr. Patel. They nodded when I walked in. Supportive. Proud, maybe. I stood at the front of the room and told my story. Not dramatic, not angry, just factual. The timeline. The warning signs I'd almost missed. The importance of documentation. The recordings that proved intent, the bank manager who'd refused to ignore red flags, the attorneys who'd helped me fight back. Watch for family members who push for quick financial decisions, I said. Watch for documents that appear suddenly. Watch for patients who seem confused about arrangements they supposedly agreed to. Watch for isolation, when one family member controls all communication and discourages others from visiting. One story helped 5 families that day. If you share this video with someone who needs it, you might save their security. Subscribe and share. Be someone's Keisha, their Patricia. I showed them the purple folder system, how I'd organized documents by date, how I'd kept duplicates, how I'd labeled everything clearly so it could be used as evidence if needed. You don't want to believe someone you love would hurt you, I said. I didn't want to believe it either, but paper doesn't lie. Timestamps don't lie. Recordings don't lie. Trust your training. Document what doesn't fit. Speak up when something feels wrong. After the presentation, 5 staff members approached me privately. Each one had a story, An aging parent, a grandmother, an uncle, family members asking too many questions about finances, pressure to sign papers, sudden changes to wills. I gave each of them Patricia's card, told them to call her, told them documentation starts today, not when the crisis hits. Janet walked me to my car afterward. We'd worked night shifts together for 15 years. She knew Marcus, had sent flowers when he died. "I'm proud of you," she said. "What you did took guts." "It took fear," I corrected. "Guts came later." She laughed, hugged me, went back inside. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. Looked at the hospital, looked at the spring trees starting to bud, thought about Trevor in Columbus, probably still angry, probably still convinced he'd been trying to help and I'd overreacted. Maybe someday he'd understand. Maybe not. Either way, I was safe. My accounts were protected. My will was clear. My boundaries were set. The emergency fund sat in my savings account, all $127,000, exactly where I'd put it over 37 years of night shifts and double-time hours. Money I'd earned by showing up when I was tired, by choosing responsibility over comfort, by believing that security mattered more than immediate gratification. It was never just money, it was proof that my years counted, that my work mattered, that I'd survived Marcus's loss and kept going, that I'd raised a son and loved him completely, even when that love required me to stop him from destroying us both. The strongest boundaries aren't on bank accounts. They're on the limits you finally allow yourself to set with people you love. I started the car, pulled out of the parking lot, drove home through streets I'd known for decades, in a city that had taught me survival comes in many forms.